Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Right Talk Wednesday. I'm your host, Kit Kalestow, and I am here today with author Scott Walker. Scott is the founder of the Cozy Vales Project, of which I am a part. I'm hoping my story will get done in time to appear in our autumn anthology that we'll talk about. And so I just want to say, first of all, give my disclaimer. I have office cats. You may see them on the camera. And with that, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ken. I'm very excited about this.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. Why don't we start by just giving our listeners and viewers just a little bit about yourself, your writing journey, and maybe your thoughts about Cozy Vales.
Yes, happy to share all of that, maybe more than you want to hear. My writing journey probably technically goes back to summer of 1977 when I saw what was to become episode 4, Star Wars at the time. All I knew was my little 10-year-old brain was blown apart and I didn't quite understand exactly what I had just witnessed. I knew, however, that was a movie unlike anything I had seen before in terms of world building and storytelling. And to this day, one of the things that I loved so much about it is all of the throwaway references, things that were not fully explained, and all of these, I guess, unexplored nooks and crannies in the storytelling and world building. And that always stuck with me. I went on to college several years later, got my BA in creative writing, graduated in the recession of 89, not so great. Guess what? A BA in creative writing during a recession is not a good combo. So I wound up ditching writing for a long time and didn't come back to it until late 2000s when I started a website with two other friends called Runes of Galadon, which was my first experience with shared worlds. And we rolled an original fantasy world and invited people to contribute art and images and text and games and RPG material, whatever. We took any kind of content in that world, and it was my first step into the shared world, I guess, experience. There's more creative stuff that happened in there, but I've long been a fan of collaborations and co-creation, and I embrace that, especially the concept of remixability with content and stories. So it's not maybe a surprise that Cozy Vales, the idea of it happened after I'd come out of my second shared world experience, which was the Delta Underground Operatives Shared World, which was an urban fantasy series I was invited to join. And that rekindled my love of shared worlds. I'd already been writing, I guess, by that point, a couple of years. I started writing full time around 2019, 2020, something like that. So did a lot of other stuff in the meantime, a lot of traditional business stuff, startups, that kind of a thing. Eventually, decades later, came back to my passion for storytelling, began writing full time, and in 2023 launched what became or what is now Cozy Vales, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's great. Love cozy fantasy. Discovered that genre in the summer of 2022, and it was like, ooh, if I could do a shared world and make it cozy fantasy and like bundle this together and write with other authors and collaborate and co-create, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. And that's kind of why we're talking today. And I'm so excited you're going to be part of the upcoming anthology. Can't wait to read your story.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I too love shared worlds. I wrote back in I'd say it'd be the late 90s. My still ride or die besties. We put together shared worlds, or actually I joined their worlds and because they were all friends before I came along. And yeah, it's there's an energy there, I think. There's an excitement and you can bounce ideas off one another. And I think it just makes the world more real.
It totally does. It makes it more fun too. You and I both know how solitary writing is. And I think honestly that was a big motivator is I really enjoyed my time in the Delta Underground Operatives shared world. We were just focusing on fiction. It wasn't like the multimedia effort from Ruins of Galadon, but it was a reminder to me that I come up with something. For example, created a magical portal city, and other authors were like, "That sounds awesome," and they started using that in their stories. And I was like, "Yeah, this is what I miss about shared worlds." Um, I know that I think the first time I realized what a shared world was was Thieves World back in the 80s.
Yes.
Do you remember the first true shared world you came across?
I have heard of Thieves World. The first one that I came across actually was probably Valdemar fan fiction, Mercedes Lackey fan fiction,
Oh yeah, yeah.
because we would write it, we'd fill out our disclaimer, send a copy to her, send a copy to the fanzines. The first shared world would be a world that a good friend of mine made called Midnight to Midnight, and it was vampires. And so that was that was wonderful. I mean, we didn't publish any of it, but it was just so much fun to come up with characters and to play with other people's characters in a nice way, no killing them off or anything. Yeah, it was lovely.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah, so you came up on the fan fiction side? Is that how you got
Yes.
started?
Yes.
Wow,
Vald- Valdemar fan fiction, Buffy fan fiction. Yes.
I missed all of that. I went straight to writing. I feel like I missed this like really cool experience. I didn't do any fan fiction writing.
I actually started writing original fiction and was trying to write for Harlequin, writing
Okay.
romances. And then I actually met my spouse at a writing workshop hosted by a local science fiction fantasy author.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. We've known each other for a long, long time. Um, God, we were young back then. So yeah, that's how I started. And then it took me about 20 years to be published. And
Got
then
it.
my first, and then I got into erotic romance, and that's where I started. But fantasy and science fiction fantasy is my first love and my own. I don't want to say my only love but it's my main love.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So can you give us any hints about your story that's in the upcoming Autumn Tales anthology for Cozy Vales?
It's going to be very on brand
Yes.
with the Kit Muse story. There will be horses in it. There that's it. I'm still working a few things out, but yeah.
Great. Well, for everyone listening, Kit's the first person to propose an equestrian themed veil in Cozy Vales. So we're very, very excited to have that new entry. And I'm personally excited to see what kind of stories come out of that veil.
Always happy to add more horses to anything. If I unmute my background, you'll see my big row of Briar horses up behind me. uh, so let's kind of start with the term cozy fantasy because I'm going to
Yeah.
admit that was new to me. I've kind of got the feel of cozy fantasy, but what do you think of, or what makes fantasy cozy to you?
Well, I'm glad you added to me because I don't have a definitive answer for what constitutes cozy fantasy in any kind of an objective way. There are, I think, some commonly agreed on aspects of it, but there's still some disagreement about exactly what is and isn't a cozy fantasy story. And that was really hammered home for me back in 2022 when I discovered Legends and Lattes. That was my first gateway in a book into cozy fantasy. And then I think a week or two later, I read House in the Cerulean Sea. And I was like, at the time I was deep, deep, deep into urban fantasy. And I'm talking, I just done a procedural Japanese urban fantasy and was talking about some very heavy themes, immigration, discrimination, sexism, race. There's a lot of like, I had a lot of things I wanted to say about those topics. And those were books that I love, but they were hard emotionally to write. And I kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
like my love for cozy fantasy came about that experience of just like having to spend years talking about these really awful things in the world that I didn't like and then writing about them, hoping that, maybe it'll change some people's minds or maybe some people out there will feel seen. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, when I found it, I started researching it. I discovered Selena Eckert's Facebook group, Fireside Fantasy on Facebook, which was devoted to indie cozy fantasy authors. and was looking at the recommendations for a lot of the books. And, oh, I love this. This is a great cozy fantasy. This is a great one to start with. And I would look at them and go, oh, they're saying the F word in here. Like this is cozy fantasy. Oh my, this chapter literally opens with the death of an adolescent being discovered in the basement of a bakery. Like I'm clutching my pearls. I'm like, oh, how is this cozy fantasy? And what I've realized is that there's a certain element of content there, right? You'll rarely find graphic violence on the page in a cozy fantasy story. But you'll find things that you would otherwise think you'd find in something more mature, like an action adventure, murder mystery, thriller kind of a book. But the way the author handles it, the way they address it, like context is everything. So you can have death in a cozy fantasy story, but how it's approached determines whether it fits with that genre or not. And so I really had to expand my definition of what I thought cozy fantasy was just based on two books I'd read, and was very quickly disabused of that concept and realized that it's a much broader umbrella. Like we've got technically cozy science fiction, cozy urban fantasy. I've done a series in what I call cozy urban fantasy. You've also got cozy fantasy. There's all kind of mashups and hybrids and micro niches and micro genres. And for me, I would say that there's a common set of tropes that more or less define cozy fantasy. And some people will say it should make the reader feel XYZ, and some people say you define cozy fantasy by the tropes. I don't know. I'm not an authority here. I would say that for me, I love books that embrace found family. That's my number one favorite trope. So I love found family. I love food. I love drink. The idea that you can have healing, overcoming trauma, finding comfort and safety in a community, whether that's a new community or an existing community, growth of some sort. But basically having a character go from feeling either unseen or unsafe to seen and safe and happy or happier than they were, that arc. To me, I love that in cozy fantasy. And then if you look at how readers end up feeling, if you define it and approach it that way, it's a hug. I just got hugged by a book and it was awesome and I love it. And it's a really wonderful, warm place that I want to return to, I guess, maybe for lack of
Hmm.
a better term. So whether you look at the trope side or the reader experience side, to me, that's that's what I think of when I think of cozy fantasy.
That sounds very much like what my fantasy writing is these days. Because yeah, when I came back to it, I was like, you know what? The world has many bad things in it. And we have to say, we need to fight against the bad things in the world. But I need a place to go that's just a mental hug. And so that's when I created my writing. Yeah, that you described it almost perfectly. It's like Mercedes Lackey's books to me. I mean, there's war, there's violence, but it's not graphic. There's the horses, and at the end of it, there always is some sort of, if not necessarily a happily ever after, but what we say in romance parlance, a happy for now. We've gotten to a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Well then please let's dive into Cozy Vales. Cozy Vales it's our shared world, your shared world that you've invited us in. And just let's talk a little bit about what Cozy Vales is and what you hope readers find there.
Uh, great question. I think for me, I aimed to create a sandbox or a tree house or a clubhouse, however you want to, whatever analogy you want to use. I just wanted to create a space that for the authors embraced all of the things that we loved about cozy fantasy. And so for me, the coming up with an original cozy fantasy world, that wasn't that hard. But because I knew it was a shared world, I did make some very specific design choices. For example, one of the things I struggled with in a lot of previous shared worlds that I'd been involved in, both ones I'd created and ones I'd been invited to join, is the world building aspect in terms of, well, here's the world building. And if it's an original world like ours, the world building can get really onerous really quickly. Like like I think
Hmm.
our source book is 172 pages and counting at this point. That's a lot of material to read before you can even begin to think about the story that you want to write. And so I came up with this idea that this world wasn't just a regular world, but it was a queendom of valleys or vales, and that each author would be able to create their own vale from scratch. So in your case, you like horses, rolling hills, great. You know, your vale is all about that. It is your corner in a larger world that you have complete control over. And then the second thing, because it's magic and it's fantasy, I said, you can have a tundra right next to a tropical vale, right next to a desert vale. Like it's just magic, right? So these vales cropped up because of a previous queen hundreds of years ago planting a magic acorn and turning an inhospitable toxic land into hundreds of these lush, verdant vales that people were able to inhabit again. And so I wanted to make it okay for authors to tell stories in their vales and kind of stay in their corner if they preferred that. And I wanted them to have the freedom to create the kind of environment and setting that they wanted to for their stories. So that was the first design choice I made. And the second one was for like we're on Discord and I wanted that space in our monthly Zoom calls. I wanted that to be as welcoming and warm as the genre that we write in too. And so it's debatable how much that succeeded, but I've tried and struggled to make sure that every author who comes in feels welcome. You know, we embrace all of the values about inclusion and diversity that our genre also happens to espouse. And I genuinely enjoy our calls, getting to know each other, getting to know authors. I haven't even met any of you in person. Like we got like 19, or including me, 19 people in this project. I have yet 2 years down the road to meet, I think, any of you in person. But we've built up this lovely community, and our Discord's a great little place to come hang out. And so for me, it was this like two, I guess it was a dual approach. There was the world I wanted that readers would eventually see in the form of stories, but then more importantly, to make it work the way I wanted it to work, I would also have to encourage a particular kind of culture with the authors and create a space that was a fostering, welcoming environment for those kinds of stories. So anyway, that was my idea in terms of like how it came about. And then the cozy fantasy stuff, it's like, well, the queendom has never been at war, never experienced war in over 600 years, and things are generally pretty cool. Like there's some crime in the queendom, but it's not egregious. And the emphasis is on cozy adventures and cozy elements and tropes. We do have an author Cassandra Sterling, she likes to write murder mysteries, so there's always a dead body in her stories usually. And then we've got some, that are much more like very, very lighthearted and humorous. We got a lot of stuff under the umbrella of Cozy Vales, and any cozy fantasy reader is going to find something that they love there.
Wonderful. And I think this would be a good time to mention the anthologies.
Yeah.
So there is Winter Tales 1 and 2 out,
hmm hmm
and then there's a Summer
Summer
Tales.
Tales. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, the invitation that I put out in Selena's group way back in the day 2 years ago, and I said, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea. I don't have all the details sketched out, but anyone wants to join me on this journey, come along." That really was me kind of pitching this idea about how this shared world would work. And I said, look, I'll pay for the covers for these anthologies. I'll spend some marketing dollars on them. I'll take care of all the communal costs for this project. So if you want to come in and all you want to do is write a short story in our anthologies that we're going to release once or twice a year, you can totally do that at zero cost to you. It doesn't cost you anything. If you want to come in and write novels, publish them under your name, you have to pay for the cover. You have to pay for marketing. You're going to pay for all of your editing and stuff, but that's okay. You can do that too. You want to do both? That's great. So I wanted to have a system and it ended up becoming the anthologies, I wanted to have a system where we're sharing certain content and introducing readers to Cozy Vales, where they can read several short stories, find authors that they love, and then if those authors are also writing novels, they can move on and read those authors' Cozy Vales novels. So right now, I've got a novel out. Gemma Clatworthy has two out with a third in her trilogy coming out, I think, in April, which would be next month. And we've got more in the pipeline because I've seen at least three different covers come my way for approval from other people. So there are definitely more novels coming. But what I wanted to do was rather than just like sit on this world for so long, I wanted to be able to get samples of our writing out into the world, introduce Cozy Vales to readers. So we decided to make these anthologies perma-free, wide, and just make them available as much as possible at the lowest possible friction point for readers to come in, visit the Vales, come hang out with us. It's really cool. It's a really cool queendom, and we've got some great stories to share with you. And again, if one of those authors has a novel and you like their short story, by all means, move on. So we've got authors who have contributed stories in every anthology. We started with Winter Tales 1 at the end of 2023. Then we had Summer Tales, summer of 23. We just did Winter Tales number 2 last December, and we've got Autumn Tales coming up in September of this year, 2025. So some of those, we've got authors who've written in all of them. Some have taken a break. They did Winter Tales 1, did not do Summer Tales. They're doing Winter Tales 2. And that's also fine. Like I wanted to make this a very like easy come, easy go. If you've got time to write a story, great. If you don't, that's okay. We're always going to be here. The Vales will always be open. The light's always going to be on. We'll always have a warm mug of mead or coffee or tea or something waiting for you when you're ready to write and come back and share your stories with us. So it's not like it's the same authors, same names every single time. And that particular decision on my part, I think, has really proven out. We've gotten lots of people I mean, I'm going to places and people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of Cozy Vales. So I'm like, holy cow, like this is crazy that people are really, people I don't even know about this project that we've worked on. So I think the anthologies have done their job in terms of marketing and getting the word out there. And then the novels are going to be a great way for authors who are in the project to make some money and to be able to collaborate. And we're, of course, my novels are promoting the anthologies and the anthologies are promoting Gemma's novels, and it all kind of supports each other. There's a lot of marketing stuff going on. But that's basically what we have is these free anthologies and then paid novels. And I should mention on our YouTube channel, youtube.com at Cozy Vales, we have one RPG live stream. It was a mission or adventure that Gemma Clatworthy wrote, and then we all played it live and recorded it. So we're beginning to explore other things beyond books for Cozy Vales, and I'll leave it there. Like we've got things in the works, so stay tuned.
We have things in the works. Yeah. Oh, definitely. And this would be a great time to remind our listeners and viewers, if you check the show notes, there are links to the anthologies. And starting with this episode, I'm actually switching to more universal links that will go to every retailer, not just the Evil River. So we will, grab an anthology, grab one, grab all. There'll be links to the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, follow. You guys all know the drill. So yeah, that would be wonderful. And if you're watching this, what I do is in the upper right-hand corner of the video, I will have the covers in rotation too. So you can also see the beautiful covers.
Like
So
right here? Right here?
Kind of right
Here?
here. Yeah.
Go check this book out.
Yeah, definitely. So, and there's also on the Cozy Vales website, there's also another book for people to check out.
There is, yes. I wrote a book called Intara's Guide to Cozy Vales. Intara was a fictional character that I made up almost from the very beginning. I think I actually wrote an excerpt from a fictional book that Intara wrote after her visit to Cozy Vales. And the whole idea was this was just be like a travelogue. A stranger in a strange land. She's from a different continent in this world. She comes to the queendom because her king sends her on a mission, wants to learn more about the queendom. And so the whole idea of the story is that she is traveling through the Vales and she's writing down her experiences and sharing her thoughts on what she experiences and comparing it to her own kingdom. And I started writing that because I thought it would be a really cool thing. A travel log is not something you typically see in series and or even shared world projects, for example. And I felt like that could be a really fun way for a brand new reader to experience the Vales from kind of a top-down view and get a lot of the world building that goes on as well. Things like currency, government structure, laws, who enforces the laws in the queendom, cultural norms, social norms, that kind of a thing. And so I wrote that as a great introduction to the world. And I called it volume one because I knew we would always be adding new scribes to the project. And so there's going to be a volume two at some point, but volume one has something like 15, 16, 17 different veils. I wrote it last year. So that one is a great way to dive in. If you don't want to deal with anthologies, you want to look for something that's a little bit more of a novel. It's a novel-sized story. You can go to cozyvales.com, sign up for the Golden Acorn, which is our newsletter. It's also the most popular broadsheet in the Queendom, and it is a nod to the mythical, factual slash mythical beginnings of the Queendom, which is the planting of a golden acorn that transformed that land into what we now know as Cozy Vales. Sign up for our newsletter, get your free copy of Antara's Guide, check it out. If you go through that and then you go on to the anthologies, you're going to have all the world building that you could possibly want to know. And you'll see a lot of Easter eggs too. I had a lot of fun working with the scribes because most of Antara's Guide takes place in Vales I didn't create. They were created by other scribes. So I'm reading their entries and I'm like, hey, how does this work? Or I kind of want to have Antara do this. Like, does that sound okay? Would that be realistic in your veil? And we had so much fun collaborating, I think, with those on that book. And the scribes who created their veils, I think with my questions, it allowed them to dive deeper, think a little bit more about their veils as well, gave them inspiration for their story. So just writing that book was a collaborative effort that was a joy in and of itself. But I also think it's a great way to jump into Cozy Vales as well for a brand new reader.
Awesome.
Currently only available at cozyvales.com, by the way, not available on any retailer.
Awesome. I was just going to repeat that link, cozyvales.com. So wonderful. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
You're going to.
maybe a little. Um, when you think about the veils, what's something that you really enjoy? I won't say your favorite, but what's something that you really enjoy in the veils?
You're talking about the world itself?
The world itself, yeah, whether from just as a cool idea or from a
Mm.
creativity standpoint or
Well, I will say I have a more general answer, and then I've got a couple of specific answers. Generally, my idea of, come create your own corner of the world and decorate it the way you want to, that has that's worked out so well, so brilliantly well, because not all scribes create a veil. You don't have to. You can always set your story in existing veils. And I created a bunch for people to use if they didn't have one. But the ones that were created by scribes, they're all unique. They're all diverse. There's some really cool aspect to it. Like we've got one, Selena, she's all about honey. And so her veil's focused on honey. And she's come up with a unique entity called the Petalborn. And they're really good at growing plants and stuff. So that's a very unique veil. And all of them have this like really awesomely creative but distinctive, I guess, tone, aesthetic elements, if you will. So every time I pop onto Discord and I go to our world building channel and someone's like, I'm proposing a new veil, I always get excited because it's going to be something really cool, just like yours as well. Specifically, I think like a lot of authors, I like to put stuff into my stories that I wish I had or I wish I could experience. So I invented a very complicated, finicky, steampunk type coffee brewing machine called the Messelkagen. And it is so finicky that it's like a one person full-time job just to keep it operating. Is it will break down if you look away for 2 seconds. But the Mesocoggin is hands down, the premier brewing machine in the Queendom. And it makes any kind of coffee drink you want exquisitely, perfectly, every single time. It's just a pain in the butt to keep operating. Um, so like I would love to have one. And it's if you just can imagine this like crazy contraption, it's like 3 feet by 3 feet by 4 feet or whatever. It's huge dials and levers and knobs and whistles and levers and gauges. Like it's just like crazy. And like I would love to have one of those in my house. I would love to be able to brew coffee every morning like that. So I think those are the kinds of things that I enjoy the most is being able to put things I wish I could do, wish I had, wish I could experience into my stories, into the world, and then getting inspired by what other scribes are bringing to the world themselves.
Awesome. Yeah, and that coffee machine sounds amazing. It really does. Well, alas, we are coming close to the end of our time. So I always like to ask one final question, and that is there something I didn't ask or something you would like to share with our listeners?
That's a really good question. I would say, good question. I'll say you haven't asked a question. I'll give you the answer first. The answer is two. The question is, how many Stormtrooper armor costumes do I own?
Oh, okay.
So there you go. I talk about Star Wars. Clearly, it's a touchstone for me. All I wanted as a kid was a Stormtrooper costume and a lightsaber. I still am waiting on the lightsaber, but I got that Stormtrooper costume.
That is awesome. Very awesome. Sorry, my voice just decided to go.
That's okay.
Well,
And there's the cat.
and there's the cat. There is Strudel. Yes. Just a second. Sorry, it's been so dry here.
All right.
So
You need a Mesocoggin coffee is what you need.
I do. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for being here. I guess we'll
Yeah,
leave it at that. Thank you so much for being here and
perfect.
check out the show notes.
I certainly will. Thanks so much for having me, Kit. And again, I can't wait to get your story for Autumn Tales.
Thank you so much.